No one is coming to save you. Introduction.
No one is coming to save you. Not your parents. Not your partner. Not your boss. Not the government. Not some future version of yourself that magically appears when things get bad enough. No one is coming. I know that sounds harsh. I know you might want to close this right now and find something more comforting. Something that tells you to just hang in there. That your breakthrough is coming. That the universe has a plan. But here's the truth you already know, somewhere deep down. You've been waiting. Waiting for the right moment. Waiting for permission. Waiting for someone to notice you, choose you, validate you. Waiting for conditions to be perfect before you finally make your move. And while you've been waiting, life has been happening. Days turned into weeks. Weeks into months. Months into years. This audiobook is not here to comfort you. It's here to wake you up. Because the moment you truly understand that no one is coming to save you is the moment you become free. Free from waiting. Free from hoping someone else will fix it. Free from the paralysis of believing you're not ready yet. When you stop waiting for rescue, you become the rescuer. When you stop hoping someone will choose you, you choose yourself. When you stop looking for permission, you grant it. Over the next hour, we're going to dismantle the lies you've been told. The comfortable illusions that keep you small. The waiting games that steal your life one day at a time. We're going to look at how you were trained to wait. How hope became a drug that numbs you instead of moves you. How the myth of being chosen keeps you on the sidelines of your own existence. And then, we're going to rebuild. Not with empty motivation. Not with fantasy. But with the cold, clarifying truth that changes everything. You are alone in this. But you're also equipped. You have everything you need right now. Not tomorrow. Not when you're more ready. Not when someone finally sees your worth. Right now, this is your life. No one else is living it for you. No one else can live it for you. And no one is coming to save you from it. So the question is simple. What are you going to do about that? Let's begin.
Part 1, The Waiting Trap. Chapter 1, You Were Trained to Wait.
Think back to when you were young. Remember what they told you? Wait your turn. Wait until you're older. Wait until you're ready. Wait for permission. Wait to be called on. Wait for the teacher to tell you it's okay. Stand in line. Raise your hand. Don't speak until spoken to. Wait. 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 You were a good kid. You followed the rules. You learned patience. And patience is a virtue, right? Except, they never told you when to stop waiting. They never taught you that lesson. The one that says, now it's time to move without permission. Now it's time to act without approval. Now it's time to start before you feel ready. That lesson, they left out. So you carried that waiting into adulthood. You wait for your career to take off. You wait for the relationship to improve. You wait for your health to get bad enough to finally change. You wait for motivation to strike like lightning. You wait for the fear to go away before you try. You wait to feel confident before you speak up. You wait for certainty before you commit. But here's what they didn't tell you. Waiting is not neutral. Waiting is not preservation. Waiting is a choice. And it's often the most dangerous choice you can make. Because while you wait, the world moves. Opportunities close. Time passes. Other people, the ones who didn't wait, they take the spots you were hoping would be yours. Not because they're better than you. Not because they're smarter, or more talented, or more deserving. But because they moved, and you waited. Let me ask you something. What are you waiting for right now? No, really. Stop and think about it. What decision are you delaying? What conversation are you avoiding? What dream are you postponing until you have more time, more money, more energy, more proof it will work? And here's the real question. Who are you waiting for? To give you permission? Your parents' approval? Your partner's support? Your boss's recognition? Society's validation? Or are you waiting for some magical future version of yourself? The one who's braver, smarter, more prepared? Here's the uncomfortable truth. That version of you doesn't exist yet because you haven't created them. And you can't create them by waiting. You create that version of yourself by moving now, by acting before you're ready, by being scared and doing it anyway. That's how transformation works. Not through waiting, through doing. Think about every major breakthrough in your life. Did it come from waiting? Or did it come from the moment you finally stopped waiting and took action despite the fear? I'm guessing it was the latter. The education system trained you to wait, to follow steps, to ask permission, to color inside the lines. And that works when you're 7 years old and learning to share crayons. But you're not 7 anymore. And life doesn't reward waiting. Life rewards momentum. The universe doesn't care if you feel ready. The market doesn't wait for you to be confident. Time certainly doesn't pause while you gather courage. Everything moves, and you're either moving with it or being left behind while you wait for conditions that will never be perfect. You were trained to wait, but you were never trained to recognize when waiting becomes surrender. You were never trained to see that at some point, waiting for permission becomes asking permission to live your own life. And no one has the right to grant or deny that permission except you. So here's your first uncomfortable realization. The waiting habit is not protecting you. It's costing you. Every day you wait is a day you don't get back. And the tragedy is not that you might fail if you try. The tragedy is that you'll never know what you could have built because you spent your life waiting for someone to tell you it was okay to start. You were trained to wait. Now you need to train yourself to move.
Chapter 2, Hope as a Sedative.
Hope is a beautiful thing. It gets you through dark times. It keeps you believing. It whispers that tomorrow might be better than today. Hope is essential, but hope, without action, is a sedative. It numbs you. It suits you. It keeps you comfortable in your discomfort. And that's the problem. Let me explain. When you hope things will get better, but do nothing to make them better, hope becomes the excuse. When you hope someone will finally see your worth, but never advocate for yourself, hope becomes the replacement for self-respect. When you hope your situation will improve, but refuse to make the hard changes, hope becomes the drug that keeps you trapped. Hope feels productive. It feels like you're doing something, like you're staying positive, like you're keeping faith. But feelings are not results. And hope without corresponding action is just wishful thinking with better marketing. Think about your own life. What have you been hoping for? A better job? A healthier body? A deeper relationship? Financial stability? Creative success? Now ask yourself honestly, how long have you been hoping? 6 months? A year? 5 years? And in that time, what have you actually done? Not what you've thought about doing. Not what you've planned to do. Not what you've hoped would magically happen. What have you done? If the answer makes you uncomfortable, good. That discomfort is information. It's telling you that hope has become your comfort zone, your excuse for inaction, your way of feeling like you're moving forward while actually standing still. Here's how hope becomes a sedative. You have a dream, a real one, something that matters to you. But it's scary. It requires risk. It demands change. It might not work. So instead of acting, you hope. You hope the opportunity will present itself more clearly. You hope you'll feel more ready tomorrow. You hope someone will discover you. You hope circumstances will shift in your favor. And that hope, it feels good. It feels productive because you're emotionally engaged with your dream. You're thinking about it, visualizing it, believing in it, but you're not building it. You're just hoping for it. And days pass, weeks pass, years pass, and you're still hoping. Meanwhile, your dream stays exactly that, a dream, because hope didn't build it. Hope didn't take the first scary step. Hope didn't make the uncomfortable phone call or have the difficult conversation or do the unglamorous work. Hope just hoped. This is the cruelest trick hope plays. It makes you feel like you're staying connected to your goals, while actually disconnecting you from the actions that would achieve them. It soothes the anxiety of inaction. It justifies the waiting. It becomes the reason you don't have to change anything today, because maybe tomorrow will be different. But tomorrow is never different. Not unless you make it different. And you can't make it different by hoping. Let's be clear about something. I'm not saying hope is bad. I'm not saying you should become cynical or pessimistic or stop believing in better outcomes. What I'm saying is this. Hope is the spark. Action is the fire. You need the spark. But if you just sit there admiring the spark, protecting the spark, talking about what the spark might become, you never get warmth. You never get light. You never get the fire that changes everything. Hope should inspire action, not replace it. Here's the pattern you need to recognize in yourself. Notice when you say, I hope things get better. That's a red flag. Because it implies that you're waiting for external forces to improve your situation, that you're not the primary agent of change, that your role is to hope, and someone else's role is to deliver. But no one is coming to deliver. The better statement is, I'm going to make things better. See the difference? One is passive, the other is active. One is waiting, the other is creating. One is hoping someone will save you, the other is saving yourself. Think about the people you admire, the ones who've built something real, who've overcome something hard, who've created the life they wanted instead of settling for the one they got. Did they do it through hope? Or did they do it through relentless, uncomfortable, imperfect action? They hoped, yes, but they moved. And movement is what separates those who change their lives from those who just hope their lives will change. Here's what you need to understand. Hope will not write your book. Hope will not start your business. Hope will not heal your relationship. Hope will not transform your health. Hope will just keep you comfortable enough to avoid doing the scary thing. And that comfort, that's the sedative. It keeps you numb to the passage of time. It keeps you asleep to the urgency of your own finite existence. It keeps you believing that someday, somehow, things will just work out. But they won't. Not on their own. You have to make them work out. And the first step is waking up from the sedation of passive hope. Wake up to the reality that your life will only change when you change it. Wake up to the truth that no amount of positive thinking creates positive results without positive action. Wake up to the fact that you've been using hope as a substitute for courage. Hope is beautiful, but hope without action is just another way of waiting. And you already know, no one is coming to save you from your waiting.
Chapter 3: The Myth of Being Chosen.
There's a fantasy you've been carrying. Maybe you're not even aware of it, but it's there. The fantasy of being chosen. You've been taught this story your entire life. In movies, the ordinary person is discovered. The hidden talent is finally seen. The right person comes along and changes everything. Someone shows up and chooses you. The talent scout, the investor, the mentor, the soulmate, the big break. Someone out there who has the power to change your life is going to find you and choose you. And until that happens, you wait. You wait to be discovered. You wait to be recognized. You wait to be validated. You wait for someone with authority, influence, or resources to see your worth and grant you access to the life you deserve. You're waiting to be chosen. Here's the brutal truth. That's a fairy tale, and believing in it is stealing your life. Let me be clear. Yes, sometimes people get discovered. Sometimes opportunities do come from external sources. Sometimes the right person at the right time does open a door. That happens. But it's not a strategy. It's not something you can build a life around. And most importantly, it's not something you can wait for. Because while you're waiting to be chosen, you're not choosing yourself. And that's the real tragedy. Not that no one is choosing you, but that you're not choosing you. Think about it. What are you not starting because you're waiting for someone to give you permission? What are you not creating because you're waiting for someone to validate it first? What are you not becoming because you're waiting for someone to see your potential? You're waiting for external validation before you give yourself internal permission. You're waiting for someone else to believe in you before you believe in yourself. You're waiting to be chosen because you haven't chosen yourself yet. And that waiting is a choice to give your power away, a choice to make your progress dependent on someone else's recognition, a choice to stay small until someone else grants you permission to be big. But here's what you need to understand. The people who are living the lives you admire, they didn't wait to be chosen. They chose themselves. The writer who self-published instead of waiting for a publisher to take a chance. The entrepreneur who started with nothing instead of waiting for investors to believe. The artist who created for years in obscurity instead of waiting for a gallery to display their work. The person who left the toxic relationship instead of waiting for their partner to change. The employee who started their own thing instead of waiting for the promotion that never came. They didn't wait to be chosen. They chose themselves. And yes, it was scary. Yes, they had doubts. Yes, they faced rejection. Yes, people told them to be realistic, to wait, to play it safe, to let the gatekeepers decide if they were worthy. But they moved anyway. Not because they felt ready. Not because they had permission. But because they understood something fundamental. You don't need to be chosen. You need to choose. Think about what you're waiting for. Are you waiting for someone to notice your talent? Start showing it. Create publicly. Put your work out there where it can't be ignored. Are you waiting for someone to invest in your idea? Start building it with whatever resources you have right now. Prove the concept. Make them want to invest because you're already in motion. Are you waiting for someone to love you the way you deserve? Start loving yourself that way. Set standards. Walk away from less. Become the person you want to attract. Are you waiting for the perfect opportunity? Create it. Are you waiting for someone to believe in you? Believe in yourself so strongly that their belief becomes irrelevant. The myth of being chosen is seductive, because if you're waiting to be chosen, then it's not your fault that nothing has happened yet. You're off the hook. You tried, right? You put yourself out there. You applied. You hoped. You waited. But no one chose you. So, what can you do? Everything. You can do everything. Because you were never supposed to wait for someone else to choose you. You were supposed to choose yourself, and then do the work so undeniable that the world has to respond. Here's the shift that changes everything. Stop asking, when will someone give me a chance? Start asking, what chance am I giving myself? Stop asking, why doesn't anyone see my potential? Start asking, am I developing my potential whether anyone sees it or not? Stop asking, when will I be discovered? Start asking, what am I building that's worth discovering? Because the truth is, no one is coming to choose you. No one is coming to discover you. No one is coming to grant you permission to live the life you imagine. But you can choose yourself. Right now, today, without anyone's permission, without anyone's validation, without anyone's approval. You can decide that you're worth investing in. You can decide that your ideas deserve to be tested. You can decide that your voice deserves to be heard. You can decide that your dreams deserve your full commitment, not when someone else validates them. Now, because waiting to be chosen is just another form of waiting to be saved, and no one is coming to save you. But you don't need saving. You need movement. You need commitment. You need to stop waiting for permission and start granting it to yourself. The myth of being chosen keeps you powerless. The truth of choosing yourself sets you free. So choose. Choose yourself. Choose today. Choose to move. Because no one else is going to do it for you. And honestly, they never were.
End of part 1.
You've been trained to wait. You've been sedated by hope without action. You've been imprisoned by the myth of being chosen. But now you know. Now you see the trap. And seeing it is the first step to escaping it. In the next part, we'll explore what happens when you stop waiting. When you stop hoping and start building. When you stop waiting to be chosen and choose yourself. We'll talk about taking ownership, about the power of radical responsibility, about what it actually means to save yourself. But for now, sit with these truths. Let them be uncomfortable. Let them challenge you. Let them wake you up. Because your life is happening right now, not in some future moment when everything finally aligns. Right now, and the question remains, what are you going to do about it?
Part 2, The Awakening. Chapter 4, The Day You Realize You're Alone.
There comes a moment when everything shifts, when the fog clears and you see it. You're alone, not lonely, not abandoned, not unlucky, just alone. Alone in the sense that matters most. You are the only one living your life. You are the only one who will face the consequences of your choices. You are the only one who will lie awake at night with your regrets. You are the only one responsible for what happens next. For some people, this realization comes in a crisis, a health scare, a betrayal, a sudden loss, a moment when the people you thought would be there aren't. For others, it comes quietly, in the middle of an ordinary day, when you realize you've been waiting for someone to fix your life, and they never will. Either way, the realization is the same. No one is coming. And for many people, this moment is devastating. Because if no one is coming to save you, then you have to save yourself. And that's terrifying. It means you can't blame anyone anymore. It means you can't wait anymore. It means the responsibility is yours. But here's what most people miss. This moment, this devastating, clarifying moment, is not the end. It's the beginning. Because once you truly understand that you're alone, Once you stop expecting rescue, once you accept that this is your life and yours alone to navigate, something incredible happens. You become powerful, not powerful in some abstract, motivational poster way, powerful in a real, practical, life-changing way. Because you stop waiting for permission and start granting it. You stop hoping for support and start building it. You stop looking for someone to blame and start looking for solutions. Think about the times in your life when you've been forced to figure something out on your own, when no one was coming to help, when you had no choice but to handle it yourself. What happened? You figured it out, didn't you? Maybe not perfectly, maybe not the way you would have if you'd had help, but you did it because you had to. And here's the truth that changes everything. You always had that capability, that resourcefulness, that strength, that ability to figure it out. It was always there. You just didn't access it because you were waiting for someone else to do it for you. The realization that you're alone is not a tragedy. It's a liberation. When you're waiting for someone to save you, you're giving them your power to act, your power to decide, your power to change your circumstances. You're making your progress dependent on their timing, their willingness, their capacity. And most of the time, they don't even know you're waiting. But when you realize you're alone, when you accept that no one is coming, you take that power back. You stop asking, why won't anyone help me? You start asking, what can I do right now with what I have? You stop asking, why don't they see what I'm going through? You start asking, what do I need to see about my situation? You stop asking, when will things get better? You start asking, what am I willing to do to make things better? This is the shift from dependency to agency, from hoping to creating, from waiting to moving. And yes, it's uncomfortable because with power comes responsibility. With agency comes accountability. With freedom comes the weight of your own choices. But that discomfort is the price of a real life. A life you create instead of inherit. A life you build instead of hope for. A life you own completely. Think about what you've been waiting for someone else to give you. Confidence? No one can give you that. You build it through action. Opportunity? No one can give you that. You create it through effort. Happiness? No one can give you that. You cultivate it through choice. Love? No one can give you that in the way you need it, until you learn to give it to yourself first. You've been waiting for external delivery of internal work. And that's why you've been waiting so long. Because no one can do your internal work for you. The day you realize you're alone is the day you stop looking outside for what you need to build inside. Here's what I want you to understand. Being alone in your responsibility doesn't mean you can't have help. It doesn't mean you can't ask for support, or collaborate, or build relationships, or seek guidance. Those things are valuable. They're important, but they're not rescue. Help is when someone walks beside you on the path you're already walking. Rescue is when you're sitting still waiting for someone to carry you. Help is collaborative. Rescue is dependent. When you realize you're alone, you stop waiting for rescue. But you don't refuse help. You just understand that help works best when you're already in motion. When you've already chosen yourself. When you're already committed to the work. People will support someone who's moving, but they'll rarely save someone who's waiting. So the question is not, who will save me? The question is, what will I do to save myself? And once you save yourself, once you prove to yourself that you can, everything changes. You stop fearing abandonment because you know you can handle being alone. You stop fearing rejection because you've already chosen yourself. You stop fearing failure because you know you'll figure it out like you always have. The day you realize you're alone is painful, but it's also the day you become free. Free from waiting, free from depending, free from the prison of hoping someone else will live your life for you. You're alone, and that's exactly what you need to be.
Chapter 5. Responsibility feels like pressure.
Let's talk about why most people avoid the truth. Why they stay in the waiting. Why they cling to hope without action. Why they refuse to choose themselves. It's not laziness. It's not lack of desire. It's not even fear of failure. It's this. Responsibility feels like pressure, and pressure feels like too much. When you accept that no one is coming to save you, when you realize you're alone in your responsibility, when you understand that your life is entirely in your hands, the weight of that can be crushing, because now everything is your fault. The good, the bad, the stuck, the broken, all of it yours. Your career isn't where you want it. Your responsibility. Your relationships aren't fulfilling. Your responsibility. Your health is suffering. Your responsibility. Your finances are a mess. Your responsibility. Your dreams are still just dreams. Your responsibility. And that feels overwhelming. It feels like pressure, constant, unrelenting pressure to fix it all, change it all, be better, do more, never rest, never fail, never make a mistake. So what do people do? They avoid responsibility. Not consciously, not deliberately, but they avoid it nonetheless. They blame their circumstances. They blame their past. They blame their parents, their partners, their bosses, the economy, the system, bad luck, bad timing. They make themselves victims, not because they enjoy suffering, but because victims don't have to take responsibility. If it's not your fault, you don't have to fix it. If you didn't cause it, you don't have to change it. If someone else is responsible, you can keep waiting for them to make it right. Victimhood is comfortable, not happy, not fulfilling, not empowering, but comfortable, because it releases you from the pressure of responsibility. Here's what you need to understand. Responsibility does feel like pressure. That part is true. But the pressure you feel from responsibility is different from the pressure of avoiding it. When you avoid responsibility, the pressure is constant and diffuse. It's everywhere and nowhere. It's the nagging sense that you should be doing something, but you don't know what. It's the guilt of inaction. It's the shame of watching your life slip away while you wait for conditions to change. That pressure never goes away. It just sits there, heavy, shapeless, suffocating. But when you take responsibility, the pressure is focused. It has direction, purpose, clarity. It's not comfortable, but it's productive. The pressure of responsibility says, this is hard, but I can do something about it. The pressure of avoidance says, this is hard, and I'm helpless. One pressure creates movement. The other creates paralysis. One pressure builds strength. The other builds resentment. One pressure is temporary. It eases as you act. The other is permanent. It grows as you wait. So yes, responsibility feels like pressure, but it's the pressure of creation, of building, of changing, of becoming. Think about the areas of your life where you've taken full responsibility, where you've stopped blaming, stopped making excuses, stopped waiting for someone else to fix it. How does that feel? Probably empowering. Not easy, not always fun, but empowering. Because even when it's hard, it's yours. You own it. You control it. You're doing something about it. Now think about the areas where you're still avoiding responsibility, where you're still blaming circumstances or waiting for conditions to change or hoping someone will step in. How does that feel? Probably suffocating. A low-grade anxiety that never quite goes away. A sense of powerlessness, of being stuck, of watching time pass while nothing changes. That's the difference. Responsibility feels like pressure, but it's the pressure of aliveness. Avoidance feels like relief, but it's the relief of numbness. And here's the paradox. The more responsibility you take, the lighter you feel. Not because the work gets easier, but because you're no longer carrying the weight of pretending you're not responsible. You're no longer maintaining the fiction that someone else should fix this. You're no longer investing energy in blame, resentment, and victimhood. You're no longer waiting. You're moving. And movement, even when it's hard, is lighter than stagnation. So let's reframe responsibility. Not as burden, but as power. When you take responsibility for your career, you're not accepting blame for where it is. You're claiming power over where it goes. When you take responsibility for your relationships, you're not accepting fault for their problems. You're claiming power over how you show up in them. When you take responsibility for your health, you're not accepting guilt for past choices. You're claiming power over future outcomes. Responsibility is not about the past. It's about the future. It's not about fault. It's about power. Yes, it feels like pressure, but that pressure is evidence that you're alive, that you're capable, that you matter enough to be responsible for something that matters. Dead things feel no pressure. Static things feel no pressure. Powerless things feel no pressure. If you feel the pressure of responsibility, it means you have power. And the question is not how to eliminate the pressure. The question is what you're going to do with the power. Most people spend their lives trying to escape pressure. But the people who build extraordinary lives, they learn to channel it, to use it, to let it focus them instead of crush them. Pressure creates diamonds, but only if you don't run from it. So feel the pressure. Let it be uncomfortable. But don't mistake discomfort for impossibility. You can handle this. Not perfectly, not without struggle, but you can handle it. Because the alternative, avoiding responsibility, doesn't eliminate the pressure. It just replaces productive pressure with the suffocating pressure of a life unlived. And that is so much heavier.
Chapter 6: No one owes you understanding.
Here's a truth that will set you free. But first, it's going to hurt. No one owes you understanding. Not your parents. Not your partner. Not your friends. Not your colleagues. Not the world. No one owes you the effort of truly seeing you, knowing you, getting you. And if you're waiting for that understanding before you move forward, you'll be waiting forever. I know what you're thinking. That sounds cold, dismissive, maybe even cruel. But stay with me. How much of your life have you put on hold? Waiting for someone to understand. Waiting for your parents to understand why you need to make a different choice than they want for you. Waiting for your partner to understand what you need without you having to explain it again. Waiting for your boss to understand your value without you having to prove it constantly. Waiting for your friends to understand why you're changing, growing, moving in a different direction. Waiting for the world to understand your vision, your struggle, your truth. And while you wait, you don't act. You don't quit the job because your family won't understand. You don't start the business because people will think you're being unrealistic. You don't set the boundary because they won't understand why you need it. You don't pursue the dream because no one in your life gets why it matters so much to you. You're holding your life hostage to other people's understanding. And here's what you need to hear. They might never understand. Not because they don't care. Not because they're bad people. But because they're not you. They don't live in your head. They don't feel what you feel. They don't dream what you dream. They don't carry what you carry. They have their own perspective, shaped by their own experiences, filtered through their own fears and desires and limitations. And expecting them to fully understand yours is setting yourself up for endless disappointment. This doesn't mean you can't seek understanding. This doesn't mean you shouldn't communicate your needs. This doesn't mean relationships don't require empathy and effort. What it means is this. You cannot make understanding a prerequisite for action. If you wait until everyone understands before you move, you'll never move. Because consensus is impossible. Because people are different. Because no one will ever understand you as completely as you need them to understand you. And that's okay. It has to be okay. Because your life cannot be dependent on their comprehension. Think about every major decision you've made or need to make. Did you have universal understanding, universal support? Or did you have doubt, criticism, confusion, and people telling you to reconsider? The people who change their lives do it without consensus. They do it when some people understand and some don't. They do it when their parents worry, when their friends question, when society raises eyebrows. They do it anyway, not because they don't care what people think, but because they care more about living their truth than getting permission to live it. Here's what happens when you release the need for understanding. You stop explaining yourself into exhaustion. You stop waiting for approval that might never come. You stop shrinking to fit other people's expectations. You make the decision. You take the action. You live with the consequences. And you let people understand or not understand on their own time. Because the truth is, most people will understand you better after you've succeeded than before you've started. When you're just talking about the dream, they don't get it. When you've built the dream, suddenly it makes sense. When you're just thinking about leaving, they think you're making a mistake. When you're thriving after leaving, they admire your courage. When you're setting boundaries for the first time, they feel rejected. When they see you healthier, happier, more whole, they get it. Results create understanding, not the other way around. So stop waiting for understanding before you create results. Create results, and let understanding follow. Or not. Because here's the final piece. Even if they never understand, it doesn't matter. Your life is not a group project. You don't need unanimous approval to live it. You don't need everyone on board before you set sail. Some people will get it. Some won't. Some will support you. Some will question you. Some will cheer for you. Some will wait for you to fail so they can say they were right. None of that, none of it, determines what you do next. What determines what you do next is what you decide. And if you're waiting for perfect understanding from everyone in your life before you make that decision, you're giving those people control over your one finite existence. Think about that. You get one life, one shot, one collection of days that will never come again, and you're letting it slip away because you're waiting for people who will never fully understand you to give you permission to be yourself. That's not love. That's not consideration. That's not kindness. That's imprisonment. Self-imposed, but imprisonment nonetheless. So here's your new mantra. I don't need you to understand. I need me to act. I don't need your approval. I need my own commitment. I don't need consensus. I need courage. And if you understand later, great. If you never understand, I'll survive. Because I'm not living for your understanding. I'm living for my truth. This is not about being selfish. This is not about ignoring the people who matter. This is not about burning bridges or acting recklessly. This is about understanding that you cannot outsource your life decisions to other people's comprehension. You can consider their input. You can value their perspective. You can communicate with love and respect. But ultimately, you must be willing to move forward even when they don't get it, even when they don't approve, even when they think you're making a mistake. Because no one owes you understanding, but you owe yourself a life fully lived. And you can't live fully while waiting for permission from people who will never fully understand. So stop waiting. Stop explaining. Stop hoping they'll finally see what you see. Move, and let your life explain itself.
End of part 2.
You've realized you're alone. You've accepted that responsibility feels like pressure. You've released the need for universal understanding. These are not easy truths. They're not comfortable realizations. But they're liberating. Because now you know. Your life is yours. Your responsibility is yours. Your choices are yours. And no one can live it for you. No one is coming to save you. But you don't need saving. You need movement. In the next part, we'll explore what that movement looks like. How to build when no one is watching. How to persist when no one believes. How to create a life that doesn't need external validation because it's built on internal certainty. But for now, breathe. Let these truths settle. Let them challenge you. Let them change you. Because understanding that no one is coming is the first step to becoming the person who doesn't need anyone to come. You're alone. You're responsible. You're misunderstood. And you're exactly where you need to be.
Part 3, The Shift. Chapter 7, When you stop waiting, time changes.
Something strange happens when you stop waiting. Time changes. Not literally, of course. The clock still ticks at the same rate. Days still have 24 hours. Years still pass whether you use them or not. But your experience of time transforms. When you're waiting, time drags. Days feel long and meaningless. Weeks blur together. You look back on months and can't remember what you actually did. Time moves, but you don't. And that disconnect is torture. But when you stop waiting, when you take ownership, when you move, time accelerates. It gains texture. It becomes real. Suddenly, days matter. Not because they're perfect. Not because you accomplish everything. But because they're yours. Because you're using them. Because you're building something with them. Let me explain what's really happening. When you're waiting, you're living in the future. Someday I'll start. Someday I'll be ready. Someday conditions will be right. Someday someone will give me permission. Someday. But someday never comes. Because someday isn't a date on the calendar. It's a fantasy, a placeholder, an excuse dressed up as patience. And while you're focused on someday, today slips past. And today is the only time you actually have. Think about your own life. How many years have you spent planning, preparing, waiting for the right moment. And in all that time, what would have happened if you just started? You'd be years into it by now. Not perfect, not finished, but years in. With experience, with lessons learned, with progress made. But you waited, and waiting gave you nothing except more waiting. Here's the shift that changes everything. From someday to today. Not tomorrow, not next week, not when you feel ready. Today, right now, this moment. And I can hear your mind resisting. But I'm not ready today. I need to prepare more. I need to learn more. I need to have more resources, more clarity, more certainty. All of that is the waiting talking. And the waiting will always have reasons. Good reasons. Logical reasons. Convincing reasons. But there's still just reasons to wait. Here's what you need to understand about readiness. You don't feel ready, then act. You act, then become ready through the acting. Readiness is not a prerequisite. It's a result. Think about anything significant you've ever done. Did you feel ready before you did it? Or did you feel terrified, uncertain, underprepared, and you did it anyway? And then, through doing it, you became the person who could do it. That's how it works. Not readiness, then action. Action, then readiness. So when you stop waiting, when you choose today instead of someday, time changes because you change. You stop being a passive observer of your life. You become an active participant. You stop watching time pass. You start using it. And here's what happens when you use time instead of waste it. You build momentum. Momentum is everything. It's the difference between stuck and moving, between thinking and doing, between wanting and having. When you're waiting, you have no momentum. You're static, frozen, watching others move while you stay still. And from a static position, starting feels impossible. The gap between where you are and where you want to be feels insurmountable. But when you start moving, even slowly, even imperfectly, you gain momentum. And momentum makes everything easier. Not easy, but easier. Because a body in motion stays in motion. And a body at rest stays at rest. Physics doesn't just apply to objects. It applies to lives. So the question is not, when will I be ready? The question is, what can I do today? Not someday. Today. What action, however small, can you take right now that moves you in the direction you want to go? Not the perfect action. Not the complete action. Not the action that solves everything. Just an action. One conversation. One application. 1 hour of work. One decision. One boundary. One commitment. Something real. Something today. Because when you take that action, time changes. The day matters. You matter. You're no longer waiting for your life to start. You're living it. And once you experience that shift, once you feel the difference between waiting time and using time, you'll never want to go back. Here's the paradox. When you're waiting for the perfect moment, time feels scarce. There's never enough time. You're always running out. You're always behind. But when you stop waiting and start acting, time expands. Not literally, but experientially. Because you're present. You're engaged. You're building. And engaged time is richer than waiting time. Think about a day when you accomplished something meaningful. When you took action towards something that mattered. That day felt full, didn't it? Even if you were tired. Even if it was hard. It felt like you actually lived that day. Now think about a day when you waited. When you scrolled. When you procrastinated. When you told yourself you'd start tomorrow. That day felt empty, didn't it? Like it disappeared. Like it didn't count. That's the difference. Waiting time vanishes. Acting time accumulates. When you stop waiting, you stop losing time. You start investing it. And investments compound. So here's your new relationship with time. Every day is today, not someday. Today, you don't need to feel ready. You need to act. You don't need perfect conditions. You need momentum. You don't need more time. You need to use the time you have. Because time is not the problem. Waiting is the problem. And when you stop waiting, time becomes your ally instead of your enemy. The clock is ticking whether you move or not. The question is, what will you have built when it stops?
Chapter 8, Self-Respect is Built in Silence.
Let me tell you what self-respect is not. It's not the applause you get when you announce your goals. It's not the likes on your transformation post. It's not the people who cheer when you say you're finally going to change. That's validation. And validation is fleeting. Self-respect is what happens when no one is watching. When no one knows what you're doing. When there's no audience, no recognition, no reward except the quiet knowledge that you did what you said you'd do. Self-respect is built in silence. Think about the last time you announced a goal, the new habit, the big change, the fresh start. You told people about it, maybe posted about it, declared your intentions. And what happened? People were excited for you. They encouraged you. They told you they believed in you. And it felt good. It felt like momentum. It felt like you'd already accomplished something just by saying it out loud. But here's the trap. Announcing creates a dopamine hit. Your brain gets a reward for talking about doing something, not for doing it, for talking about it. And once you get that reward, the actual work becomes harder because you already got the satisfaction. You already got the recognition. You already got the feeling of accomplishment. So why do the hard part? This is why people who constantly announce their goals rarely achieve them. Not because they don't want to, but because they've substituted talking for doing. They've confused the appearance of change with actual change. And the appearance is so much easier. Real change happens in silence. In the 5 a.m. wake-up when no one is there to see it. In the workout you do alone in your garage. In the pages you write that no one will read until they're finished. In the business you build before you tell anyone it exists. In the boundary you set without explaining yourself. In the habit you keep without posting about it. That's where self-respect lives. Not in the announcement. In the follow-through. Because self-respect is not about what others think of you. It's about what you think of you. And you know the truth. You know whether you're doing the work or just talking about it. You know whether you're keeping your promises to yourself or breaking them. You know whether you're becoming the person you want to be or just performing the idea of it. And that knowing, that's where self-respect is built or destroyed. In the private moments when you choose. When you could skip the work and no one would know. When you could break the commitment and no one would see. When you could give up and no one would judge. Do you do it anyway? Or do you fold? Self-respect is the compound interest of kept promises. Promises to yourself. Every time you say you'll do something, and you do it, you make a deposit. Every time you say you'll do something, and you don't, you make a withdrawal. And the account is always accurate. You can lie to everyone else, but you can't lie to yourself about what you actually did. And when your account is overdrawn, when you've made too many withdrawals and not enough deposits, you lose respect for yourself. And when you lose respect for yourself, everything becomes harder. Not because you're not capable, but because you don't trust yourself to follow through. You say you're going to start tomorrow, but you don't believe you. You say this time will be different, but you know it won't be. You set the goal, but you already expect to quit. Because that's what you do. That's who you've become through your pattern of broken promises. But here's the good news. You can rebuild. Not through announcements. Not through declarations. Through quiet consistency. One kept promise at a time. One private decision at a time. One moment when no one is watching, and you do it anyway. No fanfare. No audience. No applause. Just you. Proving to yourself that you can trust you. That's how self-respect is rebuilt. In silence. In the accumulation of private victories that no one else sees. And here's what happens when you build self-respect this way. You become unshakable. Not because you need others to validate you, but because you've validated yourself through your actions. Not because you're perfect, but because you're consistent. Not because you never fail, but because you keep your word, especially to yourself. Think about who you want to become. The person you're trying to build. That person is not built in public. They're built in private. In the decisions you make when no one is looking. In the work you do when no one is cheering. In the standards you maintain when no one would know if you lowered them. That's where transformation happens. Not on social media. Not in announcements. Not in the performance of change. But in the silent, unglamorous, consistent execution of the person you're becoming. So here's the practice. Stop announcing. Start executing. Don't tell people you're going to change. Change, and let them notice. Don't declare your goals. Achieve them, and let the results speak. Don't perform transformation. Live it. In silence, until it's undeniable. Because self-respect is not built through words. It's built through actions. Repeated. Consistent. Private actions. Actions that no one applauds. Actions that no one validates. Actions that you do simply because you said you would. That's integrity. That's self-respect. That's the foundation of a life you're proud of. And it's built in silence.
Chapter 9, The End of Negotiation with Yourself.
You negotiate with yourself constantly. You know what I'm talking about. The internal debate, the back and forth, the endless loop of reasons why you should and reasons why you shouldn't. I should go to the gym, but I'm tired. I should have the difficult conversation, but maybe tomorrow. I should work on my project, but I'll just check my phone first. I should set the boundary, but what if they get upset? Every decision becomes a negotiation. Every commitment becomes optional. Every standard becomes flexible. And every negotiation costs you energy, costs you time, costs you respect for yourself. Because here's the truth. The moment you enter negotiation with yourself, you've already lost. Not because you'll always make the wrong choice, but because you've made the choice optional. And when something is optional, you'll usually opt out. Think about the areas of your life where you're consistent, where you don't negotiate, where you just do it. You probably brush your teeth every day without debate. You probably go to work without negotiating whether you feel like it. You probably pay your rent without discussing with yourself whether it's convenient. Why? Because these things are non-negotiable. They're not up for discussion. They're not dependent on how you feel. They're not subject to internal debate. They're just what you do. And because they're non-negotiable, they're easy. Not pleasant. Not always convenient. But easy. Because there's no decision fatigue. No internal conflict. No energy wasted on debate. You just do it. Now think about the areas where you're inconsistent. Where you struggle. Where you start and stop. Where you know what you should do, but you don't do it. What's the difference? In those areas, you negotiate. Every single time. Should I? Shouldn't I? Do I have to? Can I skip just this once? Does it really matter? Will anyone notice? And the negotiation is exhausting. It drains your willpower. It creates decision fatigue. It opens the door to inconsistency. So here's the shift. The end of negotiation. Decide once. Then execute, without debate. This is how you create non-negotiables. Not through motivation. Not through discipline. Through decision. You decide what you're committed to. And then, you remove it from the negotiation table. I work out 5 days a week. Not, I try to work out. Not, I work out when I feel like it. Not, I work out if I have time. I work out 5 days a week. Non-negotiable. I don't eat after 8 p.m. Not, I shouldn't eat after 8 p.m. Not, I'll try not to eat after 8 p.m. I don't eat after 8 p.m. Non-negotiable. I write for 1 hour every morning. Not, I should write. Not, I'll write when inspiration strikes. I write for 1 hour every morning. Non-negotiable. Do you see the difference? One invites negotiation. The other closes the door. And when the door is closed, when negotiation is not an option, you just do it. Now, I know what you're thinking. But what if I'm sick? What if something comes up? What if conditions change? Fine. Life happens. Flexibility is important. But here's the key. You don't negotiate every day. You handle exceptions exceptionally. There's a difference between adjusting for genuine obstacles and negotiating your way out of discomfort. One is wisdom. The other is self-sabotage. And you know the difference. You know when something is a real exception and when you're just making excuses. The problem is not that you occasionally miss a workout because you're actually sick. The problem is that you negotiate every single day about whether you feel like it. And in that daily negotiation, you lose. Not always, but often enough that you never build momentum. Often enough that you stay inconsistent. Often enough that your goals remain fantasies instead of becoming realities. So here's the practice. Identify your non-negotiables. What are the 3 to 5 behaviors that, if you did them consistently, would transform your life? Not 10, not 20, 3 to 5. Maybe it's movement every day, no phone before 9 a.m., 8 hours of sleep, 1 hour of focused work on your most important project, a difficult conversation every week. Whatever they are for you, define them clearly, and then remove them from negotiation. Not I'll try, not I hope to, not I want to. I do, and then you do it. Without debate, without discussion, without the internal back and forth. You just do it. Because here's what happens when you end negotiation with yourself. You free up massive amounts of energy. Energy you were wasting on internal conflict. Energy you were spending on justifying, rationalizing, explaining to yourself why you don't have to do the thing you know you should do. When negotiation ends, that energy gets redirected into action, into building, into becoming. And you become unstoppable, not because you're perfect, but because you're non-negotiable. Think about the people you admire, the ones who've built something real, who've transformed themselves, who've achieved what seemed impossible. Do you think they negotiate with themselves every day? No, they decided once, and then they executed without debate. That's the secret. Not motivation, not inspiration, not even discipline in the way most people think of it. It's the end of negotiation. It's making the decision once, and then removing it from the table. It's converting should I into I do. It's transforming optional into inevitable. So here's your challenge. What will you make non-negotiable? What behavior, if you did it consistently, would change everything? Decide. Not tomorrow. Not when you feel ready. Right now. Decide. And then, end the negotiation. Close the door on the debate. Remove it from the discussion. Because every time you negotiate, you weaken your commitment. Every time you debate, you drain your energy. Every time you make it optional, you make it unlikely. But when you end negotiation, when you make it non-negotiable, when you just do it because that's who you are, everything changes. Not someday. Today. The negotiation is over. The decision is made. Now, execute.
End of part 3.
When you stop waiting, time changes. When you work in silence, self-respect builds. When you end negotiation, transformation becomes inevitable. These are not easy practices. They require you to be someone different than who you've been. Someone who acts without applause. Someone who keeps promises to themselves. Someone who doesn't negotiate their way out of discomfort. But that's exactly who you're becoming. Not through hoping, not through waiting, not through talking, through doing. In the next part, we'll explore what it means to sustain this. How to keep going when no one notices. How to persist when results don't come quickly. How to build a life that doesn't need external validation because it's built on internal certainty. But for now, let these truths settle. Today, not someday. Silence, not announcement. Execution, not negotiation. These are the practices of someone who's stopped waiting to be saved. These are the practices of someone who's saving themselves. And that someone is you.
Part 4, Building a Self-Saving System. Chapter 10, Structure Replaces Motivation.
Let's talk about motivation. Everyone wants it. Everyone chases it. Everyone waits for it. Those videos, those quotes, those speeches that make you feel like you can conquer the world. That surge of energy, that clarity of purpose, that feeling that finally, you're ready. And then it fades. 2 days later, maybe a week if you're lucky, the motivation disappears. The energy drains. The clarity clouds. And you're back where you started, waiting for the next hit of motivation to get you moving again. Here's what you need to understand. Motivation is not a strategy. It's a feeling. And feelings are unreliable. They come and go. They rise and fall. They respond to your mood, your sleep, your stress, your circumstances. You cannot build a life on feelings. You cannot transform yourself through emotions. You cannot achieve anything significant by waiting to feel motivated. Because feelings don't show up on schedule. But your life requires showing up on schedule. So here's the truth that separates those who change from those who just think about changing. Structure replaces motivation. Not supplements it. Not supports it. Replaces it. When you have structure, you don't need motivation. You just need to follow the structure. Think about your morning routine. If you have one, a real one, you probably don't negotiate it every day. You wake up. You do the things. You follow the sequence. Not because you're motivated to brush your teeth, but because that's the structure. Structure removes decisions. And removing decisions removes the opportunity to quit. Because here's what kills progress. Decision fatigue. Every time you have to decide whether to do the thing, you waste energy. You open the door to negotiation. You give yourself the option to quit. But structure closes that door. It says, this is what happens at this time. Not if I feel like it. Not when I'm motivated. Just This is what happens. Let me give you a practical example. Imagine two people who want to write a book. Person A waits for motivation. They write when inspiration strikes, when they feel creative, when the words flow easily. Some days they write 3,000 words. Some days nothing. They depend on the feeling. Person B has structure. They write every morning from 6 to 7 a.m. Every single morning. Not when they feel like it. Not when they're inspired. At 6 a.m., they write. Sometimes the words are good. Sometimes they're terrible. Doesn't matter. They write. Who finishes the book? Person B. Every time. Not because they're more talented. Not because they're more passionate. But because they have structure. And structure beats motivation. Always. Here's what structure does. It removes the question, should I work out today? Becomes irrelevant when you have structure. Because the structure says, Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 6 a.m. That's not a suggestion. That's the structure. You don't debate it. You don't negotiate it. You don't wait to feel motivated about it. You just follow the structure. And here's the beautiful part. Once you follow the structure long enough, once you prove to yourself that you can show up regardless of how you feel, something shifts. You stop needing to feel good to do good work. You stop needing to feel motivated to take action. You stop needing external circumstances to be perfect to make progress. You become structure-dependent instead of emotion-dependent. And that is freedom. Because emotions are unpredictable, but structure is reliable. So here's how you build structure that actually works. First, keep it simple. Not 15 new habits. Not a complete life overhaul. 2 or 3 critical behaviors. Maximum. The ones that, if you did them consistently, would change everything. Second, anchor them to time and place. Not, I'll work out when I have time. I work out at 6 a.m. in my garage. Specific time. Specific place. No decisions. Just execution. Third, make the structure easier to follow than to break. Remove friction from the desired behavior. Add friction to the undesired behavior. Want to work out in the morning? Sleep in your workout clothes. Want to avoid phone scrolling? Charge your phone in another room. Want to write every day? Open the document before you go to bed so it's waiting for you. Make structure the path of least resistance. Fourth, follow the structure even when it feels pointless. Especially when it feels pointless. Because some days, you'll show up and it won't feel good. The workout will be terrible. The writing will be garbage. The work will feel meaningless. Do it anyway. Not because that session matters, but because following the structure matters. Because proving to yourself that you show up regardless of results matters. Because building the identity of someone who doesn't quit matters. The structure is not about perfection. It's about presence. Showing up. Consistently. Regardless. And here's what happens when you do this. When you replace motivation with structure. When you show up on schedule instead of on feeling. When you follow the system regardless of results. You build something unbreakable. Not motivation. Not inspiration. But momentum. Real, compound, unstoppable momentum. Because motivation gets you started. But structure keeps you going. Motivation is the spark. Structure is the engine. And you don't need a new spark every day if you have an engine that runs regardless. So stop chasing motivation. Stop waiting to feel ready. Stop hoping for inspiration. Build structure. Follow structure. Trust structure. Because on your best days, you don't need it. But on your worst days, when motivation is gone, when everything feels hard, when you want to quit, structure is what saves you. Structure is how you save yourself.
Chapter 11. Discipline as Self-Trust.
Most people misunderstand discipline. They think it's about punishment, deprivation, restriction, forcing yourself to do things you hate. They think discipline is the opposite of freedom, that it's rigid, joyless, militant. And because they think that, they resist it. But discipline is not punishment. Discipline is self-trust. Let me explain. Every time you say you're going to do something, you make a promise to yourself. I'm going to work out tomorrow. I'm going to start the project this week. I'm going to stop eating junk food. I'm going to set that boundary. I'm going to have that conversation. And then, the moment comes. The moment when you have to choose. Follow through or don't. Keep the promise or break it. When you follow through, you build trust. When you break the promise, you erode trust. And the person you're building or eroding trust with is you. This is what discipline actually is. It's the practice of keeping promises to yourself. It's the accumulation of self-trust through consistent follow-through. Think about someone in your life you don't trust. Someone who says they'll do something and they don't. Who makes commitments and breaks them. Who promises and disappoints. How do you feel about them? You probably stop believing them, right? You probably stop relying on them. You probably protect yourself from expecting anything from them. Now ask yourself, how many promises have you broken to yourself? How many times have you said you'd start and you didn't? How many commitments have you made and abandoned? How many goals have you set and forgotten? And after all those broken promises, do you trust yourself? Be honest. When you say, I'm going to do this tomorrow, do you believe you? If the answer is no, if there's even a flicker of doubt, that's the problem. Not that you lack willpower, not that you lack motivation, but that you don't trust yourself. And when you don't trust yourself, everything becomes harder. You can't commit fully because you don't believe you'll follow through. You can't start boldly because you expect to quit. You can't dream big because you know your track record. The lack of self-trust is paralyzing. But here's the good news. Self-trust can be rebuilt. Not through affirmations, not through believing in yourself, through discipline, through the repeated act of doing what you said you'd do. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, you make a deposit. Every kept promise says, I can trust me. I can rely on me. I do what I say I'll do. And deposits accumulate. At first, the trust is fragile. You keep one promise and it barely registers. You keep 2, 3, 5 promises and you're still skeptical. Because you've broken so many promises before. But you keep going. You keep showing up. You keep following through. You keep doing the thing even when you don't feel like it. And slowly, the trust builds. And when the trust builds, everything changes. You start believing yourself when you say you'll do something. You start committing fully because you trust you'll follow through. You start setting bigger goals because you know you'll show up for them. This is the power of discipline. Not that it makes you perfect, but that it makes you trustworthy to yourself. And when you trust yourself, you become unstoppable because the biggest obstacle to your success is not external. It's not lack of opportunity. It's not lack of resources. It's not other people. The biggest obstacle is your relationship with yourself. If you don't trust yourself, you'll sabotage before others can. You'll quit before you fail. You'll stay small before you're rejected. But if you trust yourself, if you know, with absolute certainty, that you'll show up for yourself, then you can take any risk. You can handle any outcome. Because you know, no matter what happens, you've got you. Think about what that would feel like. To know that you'll keep your promises. To know that when you commit, you'll follow through. To know that you can rely on yourself completely. That's freedom. That's power. That's what discipline gives you. So stop thinking of discipline as punishment. It's not what you do to yourself. It's what you do for yourself. It's not restriction. It's liberation. Because when you can't trust yourself, you're a prisoner. A prisoner of your own unreliability. A prisoner of your own broken promises. A prisoner of your own past pattern of quitting. But when you build discipline, when you prove through repeated action that you can trust yourself, you break out of that prison. And suddenly, everything you want becomes possible. Not because you're more talented, but because you're more reliable to yourself. So here's the practice. Start small. Don't try to overhaul your entire life. Don't make 15 new commitments. Make one small promise, one daily action, something so simple you can't possibly fail. And then keep that promise every single day for 30 days. Not because that action will change your life, but because keeping that promise will change how you see yourself. From someone who quits to someone who keeps promises. From someone you can't trust to someone you can. And once you prove that to yourself, once you build that foundation of self-trust, you can build anything on top of it. Because discipline is not about controlling yourself. It's about trusting yourself. And when you trust yourself, you don't need anyone else to save you. Because you know, you'll show up for you.
Chapter 12, Becoming the Person Who Doesn't Quit.
There are 2 types of people. Those who quit and those who don't. That's it. Everything else is just story. Talent matters. Resources matter. Opportunity matters. But none of it matters as much as this simple binary. Do you quit or do you keep going? Because the person who quits gets nothing. No matter how talented, no matter how well-resourced, no matter how many opportunities they had. If they quit, they get nothing. But the person who doesn't quit eventually gets everything. Maybe not quickly, maybe not easily, maybe not the way they imagined. But if they don't quit, they get there. So the question is not whether you're talented enough. The question is whether you're going to quit. And here's what you need to understand. Quitting is a habit. You probably don't think of it that way. You think of each quit as an isolated incident. This one time, this one thing, this one moment when it just didn't work out. But look at your pattern. How many diets have you started and quit? How many projects have you begun and abandoned? How many commitments have you made and let fade? How many times have you been excited about something and then it got hard and you stopped? Once. Or is there a pattern? If there's a pattern, then quitting is not an incident. It's a habit. It's who you've become. And habits run your life. The good news is habits can be changed. The bad news is they can only be changed through practice. You can't think your way into becoming someone who doesn't quit. You can't hope your way there. You can't wait until you feel strong enough. You have to train it. Like a muscle. Like a skill. Through repeated practice. Here's how it works. Every time you want to quit, and you don't, you make a deposit. Every time it gets hard, and you keep going, you build the identity. Every time your brain says, this is too uncomfortable, and you stay anyway, you rewire the pattern. You're training your nervous system, teaching it that discomfort is not danger, teaching it that hard is not impossible, teaching it that you can endure more than you think. Because here's the truth about quitting. It's almost never about capability. It's about discomfort tolerance. You're capable of doing the hard thing, but it's uncomfortable, and your nervous system is designed to avoid discomfort. When you start something new, it's uncomfortable. When you push past your current limits, it's uncomfortable. When you do the thing you've been avoiding, it's uncomfortable. And your nervous system screams, stop. This is bad. We should quit. Not because you're in danger, but because you're uncomfortable. And if you've trained yourself to obey that signal, if you've made a habit of quitting when things get uncomfortable, then you'll quit. Every time. But if you train yourself differently, if you practice staying when you want to leave, if you build the skill of enduring discomfort, then you become the person who doesn't quit. Not because discomfort stops feeling uncomfortable, but because you learn it won't kill you. This is the skill that matters most. Not intelligence, not charisma, not connections. Discomfort tolerance. The ability to keep going when everything in you wants to stop. The ability to stay present when your brain is screaming at you to escape. The ability to endure the gap between where you are and where you want to be. That skill changes everything. So here's how you build it. You practice finishing. Not perfectly, not spectacularly, just finishing. Start small. Commit to something. Anything. A book, a course, a project, a workout program, something with a clear end point. And then finish it. Even when you don't want to, even when it gets boring, even when you stop seeing progress, even when you want to move on to something shinier. Finish it. Because finishing trains the identity. It says, I'm someone who completes things. I'm someone who keeps commitments. I'm someone who doesn't quit just because it got hard. And once you finish one thing, you prove to yourself that you can. Then you do it again and again. And each time, the identity strengthens. You go from someone who quits to someone who finishes. Not overnight, not through one big moment, but through repeated practice. And here's what changes when you become the person who doesn't quit. Everything. You can commit to bigger goals because you know you'll see them through. You can start harder projects because you trust you won't abandon them. You can endure longer timelines because you've trained yourself to stay. People who quit can't access these opportunities. Not because they're not talented, but because they can't commit. They can't be trusted to finish. They can't endure the uncomfortable middle. But you, if you become the person who doesn't quit, you can access anything. Because finishing is rare. Persistence is rare. Staying when everyone else quits is rare. And rare is valuable. So here's your mission. Train yourself to not quit. Not through motivation. Not through hoping you'll be stronger next time, but through deliberate practice. Find the moments when you want to quit, and stay. Feel the discomfort of wanting to leave, and stay. Notice your brain offering you exits, and stay anyway. Each time you do this, you're not just finishing that thing. You're building the person who doesn't quit, the person who can be trusted to finish, the person whose word to themselves means something. And that person, that's who you need to become. Not because quitting makes you a bad person, but because not quitting makes you powerful. And power is what you need to build the life you want, to become who you're capable of being, to save yourself, because no one is coming to save you but you. If you don't quit, you can save yourself.
End of part 4.
Structure replaces motivation. Discipline builds self-trust. Finishing creates identity. These are not theories. These are the practices that separate those who transform their lives from those who just dream about it. You now have the system. Not a perfect system, not a complicated system, but a system that works. Structure for consistency, discipline for trust, persistence for identity. And when you combine these three, when you build structure that you follow through discipline that creates trust in yourself that proves you don't quit, you become unstoppable, not because you're perfect, but because you're reliable to yourself. And that reliability is how you save yourself. In the final part, we'll bring this all together. The complete picture of a self-saving life. What it looks like, what it costs, what it gives you. But for now, you have what you need. Structure, discipline, persistence. The rest is execution. Part 5, the new reality. Chapter 13, when you stop expecting rescue. Something shifts when you truly accept that no one is coming. It's not what you think. You might expect it to feel heavy, lonely, depressing, but it doesn't. It feels lighter. Because when you stop expecting rescue, you stop being disappointed. Think about how much of your suffering comes from expectation. You expect people to understand you, and they don't. You expect opportunities to come to you, and they don't. You expect others to care as much as you do, and they don't. You expect life to be fair, and it isn't. And each unmet expectation creates disappointment, which creates resentment, which creates bitterness, which creates a life spent angry at a world that never promised you what you expected from it. But when you stop expecting rescue, when you stop expecting the world to deliver what only you can create, the disappointment dissolves. Not because you become pessimistic, but because you become realistic. You stop expecting your parents to finally approve of your choices. So when they don't, you're not crushed. You stop expecting your partner to read your mind. So when they don't, you're not resentful. You stop expecting your boss to recognize your value. So when they don't, you're not bitter. You stop expecting the world to hand you opportunities. So when it doesn't, you're not paralyzed. You expect nothing, and therefore, you're disappointed by nothing. This is not cynicism. This is clarity. Cynicism says, nothing good will happen. Clarity says, good things might happen, but I'm not waiting for them. I'm creating them. And in that clarity, in that release of expectation, you find something unexpected. Peace. Not the peace of having everything you want, but the peace of no longer needing anything from anyone. The peace of full self-reliance. The peace of knowing that whether they show up or not, you'll handle it. The peace of understanding that your well-being is not dependent on their choices. And with that peace comes power. Because anger is expensive, resentment is exhausting. Disappointment drains you. When you're constantly disappointed by unmet expectations, you're giving your energy to things you can't control. You're investing in outcomes that aren't yours to determine. You're making your emotional state dependent on other people's actions. That's powerlessness. But when you stop expecting rescue, when you stop expecting the world to deliver, you reclaim that energy, and you redirect it into what you can control, into what you can build, into what you can become. This is the shift from reactive to proactive, from victim to creator, from hoping to building. And it changes everything. You stop being angry at people for not saving you, because you never expected them to. You stop being disappointed when opportunities don't appear, because you're creating your own. You stop resenting the unfairness of life, because you're too busy making life work despite the unfairness. Less anger, less disappointment, less resentment, more control, more agency, more peace. And with that peace comes clarity. When you're not clouded by disappointment, when you're not drained by resentment, when you're not paralyzed by waiting, you see clearly. You see what needs to be done. You see what you're capable of. You see the path forward. Not because the path suddenly became obvious, but because you're no longer looking for someone else to show it to you. You're charting it yourself. And here's what's beautiful about this. When you stop expecting rescue, when you stop needing validation, approval, support from others, you paradoxically receive more of it. Not because people suddenly change, but because you do. You become someone who doesn't need saving. And people respect that. You become someone who's moving regardless. And people want to support that. You become someone who's building something real. And people want to be part of that. But here's the key. You're not doing it for them. You're doing it regardless of them. And that is magnetic. Because neediness repels. But self-sufficiency attracts. When you need people to save you, they avoid you. When you're saving yourself, they lean in. So the irony is, the moment you stop expecting rescue is often the moment help appears. But by then, you don't need it the same way. You appreciate it. You welcome it. You use it. But you don't depend on it. And that makes all the difference. Because help from a position of strength is collaboration. Help from a position of weakness is rescue. And rescue always comes with strings. With expectations. With obligations. With loss of autonomy. But collaboration is clean. It's two capable people choosing to work together. Not one person carrying another. So when you stop expecting rescue, you don't become isolated. You become independent. And from independence, you can build real connection. Not connection based on need. Connection based on choice. This is the new reality. Less disappointment, because you expect nothing. Less anger, because you blame no one. More control, because you take responsibility. More calm, because you're not at the mercy of others' choices. And in that reality, you're free.
Chapter 14. Power Feels Quiet.
If you're waiting for power to feel like thunder, you'll miss it. Because real power doesn't announce itself. It doesn't shout. It doesn't perform. It doesn't need validation. Real power is quiet. So quiet, you might not even recognize it at first. When you're building yourself, when you're following your structure, keeping your promises, not quitting, you might expect some dramatic shift. Some moment where you suddenly feel powerful, where the clouds part and you realize you've made it. But it doesn't work that way. Instead, you just wake up one day and realize you haven't negotiated with yourself in weeks. You haven't scrolled mindlessly looking for motivation. You haven't waited for permission to do what needs doing. You've just been doing it. Quietly. Consistently. Without drama. And that is power. Not the explosive kind. Not the loud kind. The sustainable kind. Because loud power burns out. Dramatic power is exhausting. Performance power needs constant validation. But quiet power just keeps going. It doesn't need applause. It doesn't need recognition. It doesn't need to prove anything to anyone. It just moves. Steady. Forward. Relentless. Think about the most powerful people you know. Not the loudest. Not the flashiest. The actual powerful ones. They're calm, aren't they? They don't rush. They don't panic. They don't perform. They just handle things. Quietly. Efficiently. Without drama. That's what real power looks like. And that's what you're building. Not the version of power that needs to announce itself, but the version that doesn't need to. Because when you're truly powerful, when you've built real self-trust, real discipline, real momentum, you don't need anyone to know. You know. And that's enough. Here's what changes when you access quiet power. You stop rushing. Because you're not trying to prove anything. You're just building. And building takes time. But you have time. Because you're consistent. You stop performing. Because you're not seeking validation. You're just executing. And execution doesn't need an audience. You stop reacting. Because you're not operating from scarcity or fear. You're operating from certainty. The certainty that you'll handle whatever comes. And that certainty is unshakable. Not because nothing can hurt you, but because you know you'll survive it. Not because you have all the answers, but because you know you'll figure it out. Not because life is easy, but because you've proven you can do hard things. This is the power no one can take from you. They can take your money, your status, your opportunities, but they can't take your ability to keep going. They can't take your structure, your discipline, your refusal to quit. They can't take the person you've become through consistent action. That is yours, forever, and it's enough. So if you're waiting for power to feel explosive, stop waiting. Power feels like waking up and following your structure without negotiation. Power feels like keeping promises to yourself when no one's watching. Power feels like not needing anyone to validate your choices. Power feels like steady forward movement regardless of circumstances. Power feels quiet. And in that quiet, you'll find something you've been searching for all along. Not excitement, not drama, not validation, but solidity. The solidity of knowing who you are. The solidity of trusting yourself completely. The solidity of being unmoved by others' opinions. The solidity of standing on a foundation you built yourself. That solidity is freedom, and it doesn't need to shout. It just is.
Chapter 15, Living Without the Backup Plan.
Let's talk about backup plans. On the surface, they seem smart, practical, responsible, evidence of good planning. You want to start a business, but you keep your job as backup. You want to pursue your art, but you study something practical as backup. You want to commit to the relationship, but you keep options open as backup. And everyone tells you this is wise. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Keep your options open. Have a plan B. But here's what they don't tell you. Backup plans weaken commitment. They create a mental escape route, a way out, a safety net, a place to retreat when things get hard. And when things get hard, and they will get hard, you'll use that escape route. Not because you're not capable, but because humans are wired to take the path of least resistance. When your business hits a rough patch, when you're 3 months in and results aren't showing yet, when you're scared and tired and doubting yourself, the backup plan whispers, you can always go back to your job. This is too risky. You have an out. And often, you take it. Not because you couldn't have made it work, but because you gave yourself permission not to. That's what backup plans do. They give you permission to quit. Now, I'm not saying be reckless. I'm not saying ignore all risk. I'm not saying jump without thinking. What I'm saying is this. At some point, if you want something badly enough, you have to burn the boats. You have to remove the escape route. You have to make retreat impossible. You have to choose fully, because partial commitment produces partial results, and partial results reinforce the belief that it won't work, which justifies the backup plan, which weakens commitment further. It's a cycle, and it keeps you stuck. But full commitment changes everything. When there's no backup plan, when retreat is not an option, when you've made success the only option, you find solutions you wouldn't have found otherwise. You work harder. You get creative. You persist longer. Not because you're suddenly more talented, but because you have to. There's no fallback, no safety net, no plan B. So you make plan A work. This is the power of burning mental escape routes. Think about the times you've fully committed to something. When quitting wasn't an option. When you had to figure it out. Maybe it was a deadline you couldn't miss. Maybe it was a responsibility you couldn't abandon. Maybe it was a promise you couldn't break. What happened? You figured it out, didn't you? Not because you had special abilities you don't normally have, but because you had no choice. And no choice forces resourcefulness. But when you have a choice, when the backup plan is sitting there, you don't access that resourcefulness. You access the exit. So here's the uncomfortable truth. If you want to save yourself, if you want to build the life you imagine, if you want to become the person you're capable of being, you have to choose it fully, without backup, without hedge, without safety net. Now, this doesn't mean quit your job before you have any traction. It doesn't mean ignore financial responsibility. It doesn't mean be stupid. What it means is, stop treating your dream as optional. Stop keeping one foot out the door. Stop maintaining the backup plan as your real plan and treating your dream as the nice to have. Flip it. Make your dream the plan, the only plan, and let everything else be temporary scaffolding that supports the plan, not replaces it. Your job isn't your backup plan. It's your current revenue source while you build your real plan. See the difference? One keeps you trapped in safety. The other keeps you building toward freedom. One makes the dream optional. The other makes the dream inevitable. And that mental shift changes your behavior. When the dream is optional, you work on it when you feel like it. When the dream is inevitable, you work on it regardless of how you feel. When the dream is optional, you quit when it gets hard. When the dream is inevitable, you find solutions when it gets hard. When the dream is optional, you need validation to continue. When the dream is inevitable, you continue regardless of validation. This is what living without a backup plan actually means. It means choosing ownership fully, committing completely, removing the mental escape routes that weaken your resolve. And yes, it's scary, because if you commit fully and it doesn't work, there's no backup, no excuse, no way to say, well, at least I had a fallback. You bet on yourself. And that's terrifying. But it's also the only way, because diluted commitment produces diluted results. And diluted results won't save you. So here's your choice. Keep the backup plan and stay comfortable. Or burn the boats and become capable. Keep your options open and remain scattered. Or commit fully and become focused. Maintain the safety net and never test your limits. Or remove the net and discover what you're actually capable of. The choice is yours. It always has been. But understand this. No one is coming to save you. And no backup plan will save you either. The only thing that saves you is full commitment to saving yourself. Without backup, without hedge, without the mental escape route that lets you quit when it gets uncomfortable. Burn the boats. Choose fully. Commit completely. Because anything less is still waiting for rescue.
End of part 5.
When you stop expecting rescue, you find peace. When you embrace quiet power, you find solidity. When you burn the backup plan, you find commitment. This is the new reality. Not easier, not comfortable, not safe, but real. A life where you're not waiting. A life where you're not performing. A life where you're not hedging. Just living. Fully committed. Fully present. Fully yours. And in that life, you're not looking for someone to save you. Because you've already saved yourself. This is what it means. To be the person who doesn't need rescue. Not because life is easy, but because you're capable. Not because you have all the answers, but because you trust yourself to find them. Not because you're invincible, but because you're committed. And that commitment, that trust, that capability, that's everything.
Final section, the truth you keep.
So here we are. You've listened to all of it. The diagnosis, the awakening, the practices, the reality. And now, there's only one question left. What will you do with this? Because here's the thing about truth. You can hear it. You can understand it. You can even agree with it. But if you don't live it, it's just information. And information without action is just another way to wait. Another way to feel like you're doing something without actually doing anything. So I need you to be honest with yourself right now. Are you going to let this be just another thing you listen to? Another moment of temporary inspiration that fades by tomorrow? Another flash of clarity that you'll ignore as soon as it gets uncomfortable? Or are you going to use this? Are you going to take what you now know and build with it? Are you going to stop waiting starting today? Are you going to choose yourself without apology? Because that's the choice. The only choice that matters. Not tomorrow. Not when you feel ready. Not when conditions are perfect. Now, let me tell you what's going to happen when you close this. Life is going to continue exactly as it was. The same demands. The same distractions, the same comfortable patterns. And those patterns will pull at you. They'll whisper that you can start tomorrow, that you should think about it more, that you need a better plan before you begin. And if you listen to those whispers, if you return to the waiting, nothing changes. This moment, this clarity will fade. And in 6 months, a year, 5 years, you'll still be waiting, still hoping someone will rescue you, still wondering why your life hasn't changed. But if you choose differently, if you take this truth and guard it, if you let it become the foundation you build on, everything changes. Not overnight, not without struggle, but it changes because you'll have stopped waiting and starting to move. So here's the truth I want you to keep. The truth you carry with you when this ends. No one is coming to save you. And that's not a curse. It's not a condemnation. It's not evidence that you're alone in some tragic, hopeless way. It's freedom. Because if no one is coming to save you, it means you're finally allowed to save yourself. You're allowed to stop waiting for permission. You're allowed to stop hoping for perfect conditions. You're allowed to stop seeking validation before you move. You're allowed to just move. To build the life you want without asking if it's okay. To become the person you're capable of being without waiting to be chosen. To create your own certainty instead of waiting for someone to give it to you. That's what freedom looks like. Not the absence of challenge. Not the presence of ease. But the knowledge, deep in your bones, that you can handle what comes. Because you've proven it to yourself. Through structure. Through discipline. Through persistence. Through showing up when you didn't feel like it. Through keeping promises when no one was watching. Through not quitting when everything in you wanted to quit. That's how you save yourself. Not through some dramatic moment. Not through finally feeling ready. Not through waiting for the stars to align. Through the quiet, unglamorous, relentless practice of doing what you said you'd do. Day after day. Week after week. Without applause. Without recognition. Without rescue. Just you. Keeping your word to yourself. And here's what I know about you. You're capable of this. Not because you're special. Not because you're chosen. But because you're human. And humans, when we commit fully, are capable of extraordinary things. You don't need to be more talented. You don't need to be more confident. You don't need to be more ready. You need to decide. And then honor that decision with your actions. That's all. That's everything. So as you move forward from this moment, remember this. No one is coming. Not to save you. Not to fix you. Not to carry you. But you don't need them to. Because you have you. And if you commit to you, if you show up for you, if you trust you, that's enough. More than enough. The waiting is over. The hoping is done. The rescue isn't coming. And that's okay. Because now, finally, you can begin. No one is coming to save you. No one is coming to save you.
END